Picture this. It's late at night, you're walking home, your phone dies, the streetlights flicker, you feel that quiet, uncomfortable, watched feeling. Then you see it. Something black and fluid oozes out of an alleyway. It moves like smoke and oil and muscle all at once. Before you can even scream, it's already on you, crawling up your arm, tightening around your chest, slipping across your face and into your mouth. You're choking, panicking, and then silence. Your heartbeat slows and a new voice appears, not in your ears, but inside your head. That's the horror of the Venom Symbiote. Not just being attacked by a monster, but being having one sharing your body. But could anything even remotely like Venom exist in real life? Could a parasite, an alien, or a piece of advanced biotech actually wrap around your body, hijack your muscles, rewire your thoughts, and co-pilot your brain from the inside? Today on the Real Science of Sci-Fi, we're going to do a full deep dive into the biology, neuroscience, parasitology, and bioengineering behind Venom. By the end of this episode, you'll know how close real parasites come to genuine mind control, whether anything could physically augment your body the way the Venom Symbiote does, and whether a real Venom would be a monster suit or something more subtle and terrifying. Stick around because the real science is stranger and in some ways scarier than the movie. If you enjoy this kind of breakdown, then hit subscribe so I know to do more Marvel biology episodes. Let's jump in. First of all, what even is a symbiote? In Marvel, Venom is part of a species called the Clintar, shape-shifting, liquid-like aliens that bond to hosts. Crucially, they aren't just parasites, they're described as symbiotes. This means the relationship can be mutualistic, i.e. both sides benefiting. In the Venom films, we see the symbiote providing strength, agility, healing, and weapons. The host provides a warm, nutrient-rich body and mobility, and both share memories, sensations, and emotions. That sounds wild until you realise that real organisms on Earth already do versions of this. Real Earth biology has endosymbionts. These are bacteria which live inside our cells, like mitochondria, which, once free, are living organisms. There are obligate symbiotes, species that literally cannot survive without each other. There are lichens, a fungus and algae merged into what looks like a single organism. And then there are holobionts, the idea that you as a human are not one organism, but a superorganism made up of human cells plus trillions of microbes. So the core Venom idea, two very different life forms becoming one functional unit, isn't crazy at all. In fact, it's the foundation of complex life on Earth. But Venom dials this up to 11. Instant bonding, conscious dialogue, and massive physical upgrades. To see whether that's even remotely plausible, we need to look at the creepiest corner of biology, that of mind-controlling parasites. If the Venom films were pitched to a parasitologist, they'd probably say something like, cool concept, but nature already does that. For example, the zombie ant fungus. Its life cycle is pure horror. A spore lands on an ant and penetrates the exoskeleton. The fungus spreads through the ant's body, forming thread-like structures. These then secrete chemicals that alter the ant's behaviour. The ant is compelled to leave the colony, climb a nearby plant, and clamp its jaws in a death grip. The fungus then kills the ant and grows a stalk out of its head to rain spores down on others leaving the nest. The fungus doesn't need to understand ant psychology. It just has to push a few biochemical buttons. Movement, climbing behaviour, jaw clamping, and evolution does the rest. Then there's Toxoplasma gondii. In rodents, it affects the brain, alters fear and attraction pathways, and specifically reduces the fear of cat smells, making infected rodents more likely to be eaten by cats. Why? Because the parasite's life cycle can only complete in a cat's gut. It is literally hacking the behaviour of the rodent to get eaten. Then we have parasitic wasps that inject venom into cockroaches to turn them into obedient living food stores. There are hairworms that drive insects into water where the worm can emerge. There's trematode parasites that make fish swim near the surface and flash more, basically saying eat me to birds. So the pattern is clear. Real life on Earth absolutely contains organisms that manipulate behaviour in incredibly specific ways. So the idea of something influencing your choice, your fear response, even your risk-taking, that's not sci-fi, that's a normal day in parasitology. But venom doesn't just tweak your anxiety levels, it grabs the steering wheel. So could anything actually control your nervous system directly? To take over Eddie Brock, the Venom Symbiote has to do 3 things. First, physically interfere with the nervous system. Second, read the host's outgoing signals, i.e. what you're trying to do. And third, write its own signals back in, i.e. what it wants you to do. We already do a crude version of this with brain-computer interfaces. Implants in the motor cortex can read neural activity and let paralysed people move robotic arms or cursors. Deep brain stimulators send electrical pulses to treat Parkinson's disease or severe depression. Spinal cord stimulators help block pain. These devices prove that nerves can be read, nerves can be stimulated, and behaviour can change as a result. Now imagine replacing rigid electronics with a living, flexible, adaptive tissue that wraps around nerves and synapses like ivy on a fence. Some parasites already migrate along nerves. The rabies virus, for example, travels from a bite wound up the peripheral nervous system into the central nervous system. Certain herpes viruses live dormant in nerve ganglia for decades. So giving access to your nerves is absolutely possible. The real challenge is bandwidth and precision. Your motor system encodes incredibly complex patterns. Walking, talking, balancing, facial expressions, fine finger movement. For a symbiote to control you with Venom-like finesse, it would need extremely high resolution, sensing of neural activity, the ability to send equally precise signals back, and a way to coordinate all of this in real time without any lag. In humans, it takes teams of engineers, powerful computers, and carefully implanted electrodes to get one robotic arm to move smoothly. An alien can do a full-body takeover seamlessly. It would have to be operating a level of neuroengineering we currently can't even imagine. So, partial control, influencing posture, emotional reactions, reflexes, that's well within the realm of possibility. Full puppet master control of every muscle in real time, that's much, much harder. But could Venom actually make you stronger? In the films, Eddie doesn't just feel stronger, he physically transforms. Bulging black tendrils of living material, instant armour, giant limbs and blades, jumps that would snap a normal human's bones. For that to happen in reality, a symbiote would need to become a second muscular system wrapped around your existing one. Real biology gives us some hints. On Earth, octopus arms are basically muscular hydrostats. No bones, just densely packed muscle fibre that can twist, shorten and thicken in any direction. There are some slime moulds that can flow, bridge gaps, and even solve mazes by dynamically growing and retracting, almost like a distributed brain and body combined. Then there are mycelium networks from fungi that can form dense, tough mats that grow rapidly and infiltrate substances. Engineers have built electroactive polymers and artificial muscles that contract when an electric current passes through. If you were to combine these ideas, you would get something that can rapidly reconfigure its shape, can contract and exert force, can anchor to surfaces and to your skeleton. Now, if you were to add alien biochemistry, something that's more efficient than our own muscles, a symbiote could, in principle, anchor to your bones and tendons, add extra contractile fibres in parallel with your own muscles, take over some of the load when you lift or strike. Your strength would increase because more force is being transmitted through your limbs. But there is a brutal catch: energy. Your body is not a free energy machine. If you output force by a factor of 5 to 10 more than normal, your energy consumption will skyrocket. That will mean a massive glucose uptake, high oxygen demand, and tons of waste heat. In the films, Venom throws cars and shrugs off damage with no obvious downside. In reality, a symbiote giving you that level of power would either exhaust your energy reserves frighteningly quickly, or would need its own internal, ultra-dense energy storage like a living battery. So could a symbiote make you stronger? Yes, but probably in bursts with a cost. Think more like a living exoskeleton that burns through your fuel rather than an infinite power-up. One of the creepiest and most interesting parts of Venom is the dialogue. Eddie hears Venom as a separate voice in his head. The symbiote reacts to danger, comments sarcastically, argues with him, and occasionally takes over. Could a real organism create that experience? We don't need aliens to answer this, we just need neuroscience. Your sense of me is the result of millions and billions of neurons, integrating sensory input, memories, emotions, and internal monologue. If something were to alter your neurotransmitters, stimulate specific brain regions, or inject structured patterns of activity into your auditory or language areas, it could create what feels like a second voice. We already know that electrical stimulation of certain brain regions can cause the feeling of an external presence or voice. Hallucinations in conditions like schizophrenia often involve internally generated voices that feel foreign. Psychedelics can dissolve the sense of single, unified self. A symbiote hooked into your limbic system and language circuits could, in theory, generate internal commentary in your own mental voice, or even in an invented one, providing powerful reward signals with dopamine hits, which you follow its suggestions. It could punish you chemically when you resist. Very quickly you could feel less like you're deciding and more like you're debating. So the idea of a host and symbiote having conversations isn't that far-fetched. The hardest bit isn't the voices, it's the symbiote having enough computation to be truly intelligent. Where would that computation live? It could have its own distributed nervous system like an octopus. It could piggyback on your brain, nudging networks into new patterns. Or in a more sci-fi twist, it could carry exotic computing structures beyond our biology. In a realistic scenario, the symbiote wouldn't be a separate witty character. It would feel more like intrusive thoughts that happen to be terrifyingly persuasive. There is, I'm afraid, one huge, boring, but crucial obstacle to all of this: your immune system. From your body's perspective, Venom is a giant blob of alien protein that should trigger complement activation of your immune system, swarms of white blood cells, inflammation, fever, and eventually destruction of the invader. Some organisms are great at hiding. Tryptanosomes constantly change the proteins on their surfaces to confuse the immune system. HIV hides inside immune cells themselves. Tumour cells evolve ways to dampen immune response. For a symbiote to survive long-term, it would need a combination of stealth, mimicking host molecules so it looks like self, suppression, actively dampening down immune responses around it, and regeneration, rapidly repairing damage from immune attacks. It might secrete anti-inflammatory compounds, cloak its surface in host proteins, or even directly manipulate immune cells. The downside? Long-term suppression of your immune system would make you incredibly vulnerable to infections and cancer. So being bonded to Venom might make you strong in the short term, but medically you'd be a disaster waiting to happen. So in a realistic world, the person with the cool symbiote powers would also quickly need to see a doctor. So, could we engineer a proto-venom? Let's bring this closer to present-day technology. If you gave a team of very ambitious synthetic biologists the Venom movies and said, build me the closest thing that's actually possible, what might they end up doing? Well, they may combine a flexible, biocompatible exosuit that wraps around the body with soft robotic actuators that augment strength and protect joints. It would have neural sensors that read motor intentions from the skin or a few implanted electrodes. It would probably have drug delivery systems that release stimulates, painkillers or hormones on demand. It might have machine learning algorithms that learn your movement patterns and anticipate your actions. The result would be faster reaction times, stronger punches and jumps, some level of autopilot assistance, options for enhancing fearlessness or focus chemically. It wouldn't be alive in the Venom sense, it wouldn't ooze or whisper in your head, but it would be the first step towards an external semi-autonomous partner that shares your body. A real biological symbiote, grown rather than built, is much further away. But the building blocks, neural interfaces, wearable robotics, targeted drug delivery and gene editing are already here. So, final verdict. Could a Venom-like symbiote take over your body? Let's score the Venom on a realism scale. Behaviour manipulation? This is very plausible. Parasites already rewrite fear and attraction. Emotional influence? Absolutely. Neurochemistry is totally hackable. The internal voice? Plausible via targeted stimulation and neurotransmitter changes. Partial motor influence? Conceivable with advanced neural interfaces. Full real-time control of every movement? Incredibly hard, but maybe just barely conceivable for an ultra-advanced alien. Shape-shifting armour and weapons? These would require exotic biomaterials, but we can imagine a kind of pathway. The huge strength boosts and with no fuel cost? That's not realistic. Energy has to come from somewhere. The instant healing and near immortality? That's way beyond anything we understand. So, could a Venom symbiote actually take over your body? A perfect, comic-accurate Venom symbiote? No. Physics, energy and immunology all say absolutely not. But a more realistic, slower, creepier version? That's much closer. Not a monster suit that crashes through buildings, but a living system that hooks into your brain, alters your desires, rewards you for doing what it wants, and slowly becomes the most important relationship in your life. Less superhero and more toxic relationship you literally can't walk away from. So, that's the verdict. A real symbiote probably wouldn't shout, "We are Venom," and throw cars around, but it might quietly steer your life from the shadows. Would you accept a realistic symbiote if it made you stronger, smarter and braver, but you had to share control of your body? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown of Venom's biology, then hit the subscribe button and subscribe to the Real Science of Sci-Fi and check out the rest of my channel. Thanks for watching. I've been Dr. Dan Stokes, and this has been the Real Science of Sci-Fi.